You would not be here today. You actually died 30 years ago. Take us back to that time and tell us what happened.
I was a young mother, just turned 30. This was early 1970, and I had surgery, major surgery. The surgery went fine, no problems, but what came out of that was medication. I've never been able to take medication. And they gave me two kinds. One was for nausea and the other was for pain. And the combination of the two was too much for my body because I was very small at that time, weighed like 96 pounds. And they sent me home. The night before, I had a reaction to it. The nurses thought it was nerves. And so they said, oh, you're going to be fine. And the next morning they came in and they gave me another dose of it before I left to go home. And on the way home, I kept telling my husband I felt strange. And then when we got home, my mother-in-law was there with my 3 children. She was visiting from Lake Charles. And my husband left to go back to work. And I told my mother-in-law, I said, there's something wrong. I'm having a stroke. That's what I thought it was. Because my face felt so strange and my throat felt strange. And I was having some difficulties breathing. And I walked to the bedroom and she came and looked at me. And he came home and called the doctor immediately, and the doctor said, get her back to the hospital, don't even wait on an ambulance, because it sounds like she's having a drug reaction, and time is essential. And I do remember everything about the trip to the hospital, because that's the first time my husband ever broke the speed limit in his life. And I remember everything. I remember what I was wearing. I can describe it in detail, the robe, the gown. I can describe the emergency room. I can show the table, how it was laid out. When they laid me on it, the doctor, trying to tell him, as he was bending over me, trying to tell him that I could not breathe and that I was suffocating and that I thought my heart was going to explode. And I remember him pulling my head back. And the next thing I remember was looking down, and I was up toward the ceiling, and I was looking down.
Looking down, which means you were then out of your body.
I was out of my body at that time, and I was watching him working on me. I heard what he said, everything, the words he used, I could quote them verbatim.
What did he say?
He was cursing because he said things like, oh, well, I'm not going to repeat the words, but they were curse words because he was hitting me in the chest. And I remember thinking, gosh, that looks just like me. And then it just hit me. It was me. It was me. And he was screaming at the nurses, and then I thought, this is neat. You know, all these thoughts, I often ask Christ, why did you let me have these funny thoughts? And he said, so that I would know, and I'm sure I understand what he meant. But I could look across into all of the other emergency rooms, and I could see everywhere. I could see everything that was going on, and I could hear what was being said.
Did he pronounce you dead?
He pronounced me dead because my heart stopped totally. And the code thing, they were screaming for code or something. I'm sure it was like they have a code when something like that happens. And I remember people were running from every direction toward that room. And when he said that, that's when I was yanked and pulled through a tunnel, a dark tunnel. And there were glittery lights around going with me. And I remember only one moment of something like feeling like it was pulling at my foot. And I remember thinking I had to get away from it. And
what was that?
I'm sure it was Satan. He torments you, at your time of death. I don't think people understand that, but he does. He's always there. He never gives up, even at that very last moment.
And when you said you had been pulled up, was it like a vacuum?
Like something, just something pulling me. It was like, like a vacuum, I guess you'd say. I just knew that there was something holding my hand, but I couldn't see it because it was so dark. But whatever it was comforting.
So you weren't scared?
And I wasn't scared. And I remember looking up at the light, and it was so tiny. It was just a pinhole of light. I remember thinking, I've got to go to that light. There's safety in that light. Why I knew that, I don't know.
What was in the tunnel? What did that look like?
The tunnel was just darkness with these little sparkly lights, and I was told later that those were some other souls in transit and lots of angels, because the angels travel very fast and they just leave streaks of light. As I got close to the light, it got brighter, and closer I got, the bigger it got, and the closer and closer. And I just knew that that was going to be the most marvelous, safe place. And as I went into the light, it was like an opening. The light was Christ.
How did you know it was Christ and not God?
I just knew Jesus. It was Jesus. And
what did that feel like? You were there before Jesus Christ. Describe what that felt like.
it was fear that, because I began to realize it was very obvious. I realized that something had happened in that emergency room, because I wouldn't be up there if I hadn't been. And I do remember, this is always very emotional for me, and I need to have a Kleenex. He put his arms around me. And I've never in my life known such love as that. I thought having children, because I had 3 small children, that I knew what love was, because being a mother, you know, you love unconditionally. Well, his love is like that, only it's even more consuming. He goes all the way through you to the very essence of your soul. And he told me he loved me. And he said, I'm going to show you things. And everything I show you, you're going to remember, because it will be burned into your memory. And he said, I want you to watch. And as every time he moved his hands, I saw my life. It was like a fast movie camera picture of my life from the time I was a very tiny child all the way up to that time. He showed me everything good I'd ever done and everything bad. Every time I did something that hurt him, I knew the pain I caused him.
You felt that pain?
Oh, yes, I felt the pain. And every time I did something good, I felt his joy and his happiness for what I'd done. I was shown my first 2 guardian angels that I had known about from the time I was a tiny child, that he revealed to me when I was a child that I needed help, and he sent, that was my first 2 angels. He asked me if I was happy with my life, and I said no, because after seeing some of the things I had done that were not right, and I knew I'd hurt him, it didn't set right with me at all. And then he said he was going to show me some other things, and he says, you're going to remember this. And I was shown purgatory, and I was shown hell. And a lot of people think that there is no purgatory, no hell, and I got news for them, there is. And hell, there is no way out of it, ever, ever, ever. You're there for all eternity. It's more horrible than anything anyone has ever seen or read about. You can never imagine.
I know it's hard to describe, and you hate to even talk about it, but describe what you saw visually.
There are great fires in hell. The people, the souls, because it's not bodies, it's souls that go into there, are consumed by the fires, and they're just turned into horrible-looking, grotesque things. I don't know what you'd even call them. I don't know what you call them.
Worse than grotesque animals?
They're horrible. It's just absolutely horrible. And
are they screeching or screaming?
Oh yes, they're still screaming at God, and they're still cursing Him. They will never learn that that is their white penance for all eternity. Mm-hmm. They will always curse Him, and they will never get out of there.
Did you see why people were there? Were you told why these people were there?
Because they couldn't love Christ. They didn't want Him. He gives you every opportunity in your lifetime to love Him and to know Him. Mm-hmm. Over and over and over, He comes to us. Every day He comes to us. And people are either stupid or they think they have all the time in the world, but you may not have all the time in the world. You could be hit, walk out the door and get hit by a big truck and die right then and there. but he's very, very merciful. And he gives you, even at the instant of your death, at the moment of your soul detaching from your body, he will appear to you, and he will let you, he asks you, do you love me? And are you sorry? Mm-hmm. And those are the two words, that's the two little quick sentences I guess I'll always remember, because remember he asked me, was I happy? Was I sorry? And if you show your sorrow and you show your love for him, he'll put you into purgatory, maybe the lowest area, but you're not going to hell. You'll eventually make it from purgatory up into heaven.
So you certainly go to hell. Is it that, or is it a combination possibly of that and the absolute denial of God in someone's heart? The denial of God is worse than even the murder. So if a murderer...
Total denial of him.
You have a sense that that person might go to...
You think about people that are murderers and you think, well, I hope they go to hell. Well, I don't want anyone to go to hell.
Right. After
seeing it, I don't want anyone to go to hell. I don't care how bad you've been in this life, I don't want you to go to hell. And I know that sounds, people say, well, how could you say that? If you had a child that was murdered, you wouldn't feel that way. No, I'm sorry, I would still feel that way, because I've seen hell. I know what it is, and I know the denial that you will have there.
Is it a state of being, a state within us, or is it a physical place?
It's a physical place. That's the way it was shown to me. It was a physical place. And the reason why, this is hard, always hard for me to talk about. I was shown, because I was so upset when I saw the souls going into hell. I don't know, like something tore inside of me. The pain was just so intense. And I remember crying out to him, can I pray for them? Please let me pray for them. And he said no, because he said, if you pray for them, for the souls in hell, it makes their suffering even worse.
Why?
It does the reverse. It can't help them because they're not going to get out of there. And it just makes their suffering, it makes them hate God even more, because this is what they have chosen. You see, that's their free will. They chose that. They really did. They chose it. And I can remember saying, well, what can I do? And he says, I want you to watch. And I still, every time I give a talk on this, I ask the same question. I wonder if the man even knew he was really dead. I've thought about that over and over, because it has bothered me, because all these years, for 30 years, I've seen this man's face, and I've seen his soul, and it has just lived with me. A man, Christ said he was going to show me something, and he did. He said, I want you to show, and you will see how the opportunities you're given for my love, and how you can reject it. And he showed me a man, and it was like he was going backwards in the guy's life, showing me all the times this man had been offered the opportunity to come to Christ, and how horrible he was. He was always cursing God and cursing Christ, and anybody that tried to get him to church, he just was horrible, just absolutely horrible. And he just wasn't a very nice person, period. And he was killed instantly in an accident, in a car accident. And I saw his body raising up, the soul raising up from the body. And he was like the soul was looking around like it was kind of amazed that this was happening. And Christ appeared. He says, now watch. And he was just there. And it's like he asked the guy if he was sorry, and did he love him? And was he sorry for his sins? And the man immediately started cursing Christ again and said, I reject everything. Just let me go to hell. And that's where he went. And all these years, I've thought about this man, and I've thought about what I was shown, and I've wondered over and over, did he even really know that he was dead, or did he think it was just a game? He went to hell, and I watched as his soul descended into hell, and for just one brief second, just so brief that if you didn't know it happened, you wouldn't have realized it. He was given just a very brief vision of what heaven was. And he knew that's what makes their time there so much worse, is they will always know for all eternity what they've missed. Right. And that has lived with me for 30 years.
Did you see any young people in hell? Children?
No.
No.
Christ is not going to condemn children to hell. He knows the innocence of them, and he knows that children are used by adults, and that he's not going to do that to them.
How about anybody you knew at one time? Did you see anybody you recognized?
No, thank goodness I didn't. I don't think I could have stood that.
Yeah.
But in purgatory, I did see someone. Now, purgatory is levels. I don't know about how deep hell is, and I don't want to know. But I just know that it's the most horrible, the smell, because he let me get a glimpse and a smell of what hell smelled like, and I'll never forget that either.
And did you see the devil?
Oh, yeah. And
what did he look like?
Many times since. He looks like he looks like something that had acid poured on. I mean, really, it's really horrible looking. His features change. He looks, well, he's just demonic. I don't know how to say it. His eyes, everything about
Did his look ever change? Did he have many looks, many evil looks to him?
He can.
Did you hear him speaking? Did he say anything?
Oh, I've heard his voice more than once, oh, yes.
What was he saying down there?
He was still cursing God. And there's anybody that thinks, I hear people say, oh, I just want to go to hell, you know, or you go to hell or something. And I'm thinking to myself, don't ever say that in my presence, and don't ever even think it about yourself, because you don't know what hell is.
No concept.
They have no concept of what it is. And when I was shown purgatory, at least you're going to get out of there. It may take you 100 years, may take you 200 years, may take you 10 days, may take you 1 day. There's no time thing in heaven. You have no conception of time. There's no clocks that I could see. And I thought, well, that'd be kind of neat, you know, not have to worry about time. But everything that happens between the heavenly realm and here is in an instant, just like the blink of an eye. And purgatory is levels.
How many levels?
I don't know. I was shown the deepest level, which I call it the gloomiest and the saddest, because when he showed me purgatory, at first I didn't understand what it was, because things looked so gray. The souls looked so gray, and I understood those were souls, and I'll tell you why later. But I remember thinking they looked so sad, because it was like just you could hear sometimes crying out and some crying, but most of it was you could hear them praying. You can actually hear them praying, but they weren't praying for themselves. That's where the souls, where the prayers come in for the souls in purgatory. The lowest level is the darkest, the gloomiest, the saddest, as far as I'm concerned. It's really the closest, it looks like, to hell.
And what kinds of people are there?
All kinds. I don't want to hurt any priest feelings or nuns, but there's many priests and nuns in there.
Did you find out why?
I knew who they were. Oh, yeah.
What had they done wrong?
Many of them had, they weren't the shepherds that God had intended them to be. And every soul that they lost through their going off on the wrong path, every soul that they lost that ended up in the deepest part of purgatory, they had to answer for, or if some ended up in hell, they have to answer for that. And they're spending their time. It's like, not like a prison time, because I don't mind going to purgatory. I just asked them not to put me too far down. But because they weren't doing the work that Christ had set out for them
You mean very bad things like pedophilia or abuse of any sort?
Or just up there, and then they will also because of not being good shepherds. And I love the priest. I pray for them constantly because they need the prayers. But and because Satan's also after them constantly, and he'll do anything to pull them off their path. But they don't realize what God, Almighty God, has. I can't talk about that. What Almighty God has given them that comes from heaven at their time of their ordination. They have no idea. I do, because I was shown it, and I'm not allowed to speak about that. He won't let me.
Why is that?
There's certain things he only wants me to speak to priest about, okay? And so I'm real obedient when Christ says no, and I can hear him.
I don't blame you at this point.
No. I'm at the point in my life where I want to do everything that is right. But anyway, they do end up in purgatory. Many of them end up in the very bottom of purgatory. And that's, those areas are so sad. It's so depressing. You can't, there's fires, okay? But it's not fires burning around you like you would think like hell is. It's a fire burning in the soul. It's a consuming for wanting God to see his face. It's a burning of all their sins and the pain that they know that they caused God because of their sinful ways or the sins that they committed. And it's a burning off of that, but it's burning within.
So it's the most consuming pain that you might have experienced here of losing your greatest loved one, or
that's right,
a thousand times that.
It just
feeling.
Never. It's like, and I see it. I mean, even today, I can close my eyes at night, or sometimes I'll be driving along and I get a flash of the open door to heaven, and it's like I see this. I can still see it. It's just like he wrote it in my brain. It's everything. I can see it. When I'm talking to you, I'm seeing the souls.
And you also saw someone there, though, that you had known as a young child. So there are lay people there that you've seen.
My great uncle. Oh, there's a lot of lay people. Like I said, I'll be there one day. I just hope somebody can pray down here and get me up, get me the rest of the way up. My great uncle had committed suicide, and I was like 4 or 5 years old when he shot himself, and he killed himself because he'd been in, I think, World War I or World War II or something, had been exposed to mustard gas or something, and it was destroying his lungs, and he couldn't stand the pain anymore. Well, nobody, except for my mother, bless her heart, prayed for him, for Uncle Creighton, because he was Methodist, and the other faith, as everyone knows, does not pray for souls in purgatory because they don't even really know about purgatory. And I saw Uncle Creighton, and he was in the lowest area, and he was begging for help, and it was like I could feel him reaching out to me, asking for help. And that was the one thing that I did when I was sent back. I laugh, I say I got kicked out of heaven, but when I was sent back was I started praying for Uncle Creighton and told my mother, I said, we need to really get a bunch of masses done and rosaries and so on for him, because I said he's still in the lowest part of purgatory. He has never risen above that.
And he was crying out as well. What was he saying when he was crying out? Was he sorry for what he had done?
Yes, asking for mercy. And yeah, oh yeah, you know, there's no, your soul knows, there's no way. You can hide all of your life from Christ, and you think you can hide and bury everything, and he's not going to know it. He knows everything. There is nothing that is hidden. Every thought, every action, he knows.
Now, that was 30 years ago. Do you know whether or not he's been released yet?
Oh, yeah.
He's in heaven now?
Yeah.
How soon after that, after you saw him?
Well, let's see. This was 1970, and he'd already been there now.
25 years.
At least 25 years. Well, he didn't get released until about 5 years ago. So he spent a long time there. But he had done something that, you know, taking your own life is really, it's kind of serious. But Christ loved him so much that he was allowing him. But he wasn't getting any prayers. Maybe if he'd been getting rosaries and masses and so on done all that time, maybe he would have moved up a little bit quicker. The thing about the souls in purgatory that a lot of people do not understand, and I have even spoken to many Protestants on this, you can't pray for yourself once you get into purgatory, period. Your chance for everything good is here on this earth now, at this moment. Once you get to purgatory, you can't do anything. All you can do is you can pray, you can show your sorrow over and over to Christ, but you can only pray for the people down here. And you can do, if you're lucky, you can ask for help from heaven, and if Christ wants to, he will help you out. Anyway, you can't pray for yourself. And that's the one thing that I have learned. That's why so many have to pray for the souls in purgatory here, because that's helping to release them and move them up. As they get higher in purgatory, it becomes lighter and brighter. And your guardian angel, that's the one thing I love about my guardian angel. It's going to be very crowded when I get down there with all my angels. But they do come and visit you the whole time you're in purgatory. And it's only when you're finally released from there into heaven that their job for taking care of you is over.
All right, let's talk about some of the other levels. There's the bottom level you spoke about. Then you saw another level?
Yeah, I just saw, there was 4 or 5 levels, but whatever it was levels.
And they got lighter and lighter as they went along?
The souls I saw many souls that just went through purgatory like just a bright flame within them and write out, these are the souls that didn't have a lot of sins on their souls, like babies and stuff like that. And
babies? There are babies in purgatory?
Yeah, they go right through, though. God takes them right, and their angel goes with them the whole way.
So babies don't just die and go straight to heaven?
They don't even know, they don't even realize that they've been through purgatory.
Okay. Why wouldn't they go straight to heaven?
Because someone asked why didn't they get stuck in hell, and I said, because when a baby dies, there's so many tears from heaven that come down that it's like a baptism on them. Anyway, but no, everyone, because you're born with venial sin, everyone is born with that sin. And because of that, that's just the one little blemish still on the soul. Then as the souls are cleansed completely, that's where I want to be one day. They're radiant. They're just radiant.
Well, how long does it take the average soul to be released into heaven? How long does that usually take? Because if we're praying
It could be 2 days, our time, and to them it could be 2 years, 6 years.
See, there's no real comparison.
You have no time. You don't have any idea. Whenever I think about Uncle Creighton, because of the length of time that he was in there, I think to myself, well, boy, I hope I'm not down there that long. But
you said you have to pray for them to be, to have them released
and
sooner.
every time you say a prayer or have a rosary said for them or a mass said, and you say their name, they hear it. They know it.
They know it.
And it's so refreshing. It's like a coolness on their souls. It's just for a moment. It's the most beautiful thing.
Well, how much longer would they have to stay in purgatory if no one prayed for them? Did you receive a sense of that? Or
Christ, because I was really distressed about that, and I remember asking him, and he did laugh because he does have a sense of humor, and he reminded me about the masses. And all of a sudden, it was like I understood what he meant. Every day, all over the world, several times a day and night, masses are being said all over the world. I have no idea of how many masses are being said. And in the mass, the priest will always pray for the souls in purgatory. So those who never have anyone to pray for them are getting the benefit of these masses. And so some of them, it's just like it might be just real brief. You're just in and out. But I can't tell you about time because I had no conception of time.
But if I'm praying for somebody who's passed away, when do I know to stop praying for that person?
Don't worry about it. Just keep on praying for them and doing the masses and so on, because what Christ will do is, if they're released, the person that has no one at all that ever prays for them, he'll give that to them, so it helps them out.
Oh, okay.
So it's never wasted. It's just like a rosary is never left unsaid and finished. If a person starts a rosary and doesn't finish it, it's never left unfinished. The angels continue the rosary and finish it. And a lot of people don't know that, but I do. But anyway.
And the souls can hear us praying for them.
Oh, yeah.
Can they pray for us? Is there any benefit there? Can they do that?
They pray for us. I get a lot of help from the Holy Souls. I have to, because I do so much work, but I'm promoting prayer for them because I know what purgatory is and what it's like. And so you want to make sure that they, and I always say, guys, if you got any extra help up there, I need it here, and they help me out, the souls do.
Who goes straight to heaven?
There are a few. I saw a few. I don't think I could figure out if maybe there were some nuns. I remember seeing, and I knew. Don't ask me how I knew, because I don't. There's some things I cannot explain. There's no way to put it into words. But you just know that they were religious, and they were very, very good religious. And I did see some of them just go right through.
Was it just that they were very good, or did they also go through some suffering on earth?
They probably did a lot of suffering here on earth. And that's another thing that people don't understand. Our suffering here on earth is, my dad suffered immensely before he died. But I also know that he was seeing the angels because they were lining up around him, and he kept talking about them. And so his suffering was to lessen his time in purgatory. My dad's already in heaven, so is my mother. But if you suffer here on earth and you give that suffering to Christ to use for the benefit of either souls in purgatory or for people who don't even know Christ, for conversion of sinners, in other words, the more you offer that up and don't gripe about it, the less time you have in purgatory. It's like you're doing some of your purgatory right here on earth.
Mm-hmm.
And many, many people don't understand that. And it's wonderful.
Are any of the people who are suffering from, let's say, cancer or some of these horrible, debilitating diseases that have put them in so much tremendous pain that they feel like they can't take it anymore, do any of those people who take that suffering as their cross go straight to heaven?
A few do.
A few?
Yes. Yes.
But has it coincided with a holy life as well?
Okay. What heaven is so beautiful.
Mm-hmm.
So beautiful. You would never, in a million years, could I ever describe the beauty of heaven. It is so clean. Everything up there is just beautiful. It's like 3D. I don't know how else to explain it. I keep asking him to help me every now and then. I'll have an angel that'll help me out a little bit. But it's so beautiful.
It's bright?
Bright. And music, just music. Oh, gosh, I've been looking for the music for years. It's
voices,
voices, billions and billions, not millions, but billions and billions upon voices being raised in praise of God.
What are they singing? Any words that are audible to you?
I didn't hear the words. I just heard the voices.
Choruses.
And I saw many souls there on the level that I was on. I saw huge angels, and
what do they look like?
They look like angels. They have the great big wings, and I never could figure out what the clothing was. It was gauzy, beautiful, pastelish looking, beautiful stuff. I never could figure out what it was, but the angels that I saw kneeling like in the front of the throne of Almighty God were at least 3 stories high, the biggest angels I've ever seen. In fact, later when I was sent back, I told Christ one night, I said, listen, if you send any of those angels to my house, there's no way they're going to fit in here. And I've always thought about that, and he has sent some that's been pretty tall, that has been as high as my ceiling, but I'm always kind of worried about that. Think about Jack and the Beanstalk, you know, with this huge angel. But they were very powerful looking angels, very strong. And I want to describe heaven, and I've asked Christ to help me out, and he says try to do it in my words, and it's so hard. I tell him I don't know how to do it in my words because it's so beautiful. It's the perfumes that you smell there are just fantastic. It's just like the flowers they're singing. I don't know how to say it, but everything looks like they're just singing. Everything's moving and swaying. It's just...
What are they doing there? What are the souls doing?
Floating around. That's the only way I can describe it. I never saw feet because, you see, I'm seeing souls. This is just the casing. I can't describe the souls.
Are they transparent like we would consider spirits to be? Or?
Some of them are like that, and some are more, you can see a form.
A face?
Like,
limbs?
like you see, yes, you can see that. I just never could see the feet, but maybe it's because I wasn't looking for it. And they move. They just, like, one minute they're here, and the next minute they're over here. And I saw my grandmother, who had died way before I was born. I never met her. I don't think I'd even seen a picture of her. And I was conversing with Christ when all of a sudden she was just there. I floated down. She was just there. And she told me something she wanted me to tell my mother. And she pulled out of the sleeve of her garment this gorgeous rosary. It was just beautiful. And she says, remember the rosary. And I've never forgotten that because my oldest daughter was named after her great-grandmother. And my daughter's name is Melanie Marie, so Marie, I love the name of Marie. And my grandmother's name, that was her name. And it was like, remember the rosary. So I knew that I was going to have to do that rosary a little bit more than what I was doing it. This hit and miss stuff. But
how often were you doing it at the time?
If I was doing it once a week, I was doing good.
Okay.
I was not doing all the things I should have been doing back then, but I'll tell you what, I've certainly changed.
What do you do now? How many rosaries?
Oh, I do at least three a day. And if I don't, she reminds me, the Blessed Mother will remind me. Oh, she's very good at that. She lets me know.
We've heard also that there are different levels in heaven, that the holier you are, the closer you are to God. Is that what you saw?
I laughed at it. I was on the basement, but Christ laughed about it too because he thinks I've got a sense of humor, and he does too. But I was on I call it the lowest level, because I was not allowed to go any higher. I was not allowed. When I looked up and saw the height of these angels, I was told then that not to look any further or any higher. And all of a sudden, it was just like this mist came in, and I was not allowed to see any higher than the top of their head.
So you did not see the throne of God?
No, I just saw a tiny little portion.
You didn't see God?
No, and I was told why, and I've never questioned it. But that
Can you
little
tell
bit
us why?
I was told by Christ if I saw him, I would not be allowed to come back, and he had work for me to do. And so
Why is that? Why would you not be able to come back if you
because
saw
he
him?
is so radiant, from what I understand. He must be to have, and he must be awfully big. I mean, when you think about these angels, how huge they are. If they were the angels I saw. And I heard his voice just briefly. And I can tell you what, you think you hear thunder sometimes, wait till you hear his voice. It's
You heard his voice?
Yeah, just very briefly.
What did he say?
It's just a rumble. It was like, you know, I could distinguish some of the words, but
Can you recall any of them?
no. And I think he did that on purpose so that I would not remember. Maybe there's a reason for it.
And so, just to get a sense of those angels you were talking about, 10 feet, 15 feet, 20 feet?
3 stories.
3 stories high.
A 3-story building. You look at like this building, okay? You see how tall it is?
Right.
You think about an angel that tall, and that's kneeling. That's not standing, that's kneeling. So you can imagine how tall they were if they stood up. Now, I didn't want to stand up because I didn't know what was going to happen. But the Blessed Mother, she is so beautiful. I give out these little cards of her. That's cards from Medjugorje. And that's really the closest I've ever found to how she looked in heaven.
Describe her for us.
She's looked very young. To me, she didn't look like she was any older than I was. Her skin's just fantastic, just very smooth, very
30 years old at the time.
Yeah. And she just has a radiance. And when she speaks, it's like you hear billions of little bells going off. Her voice is so beautiful. When I hear sometimes wind chimes, I think about the Blessed Mother. And she had the rosary, always a rosary. People don't understand how important it is. But she told me things, and that's why I know her voice. And when she speaks to me now, I know it's her. I don't have to question it. But she told me all the times that I had prayed to her, and that she showed me how she'd always answered me. And that was the beginning of me realizing that, you know, you think you pray and your prayer's not being answered, but every prayer is being answered. There's never a prayer left undone. And but the prayers are going to be answered God's way, not our way. It's going to be his will. And St. Michael was there with her. And when I looked at him, that was the beginning of my love affair with St. Michael, because I looked at him and I said, oh, you're the strongest looking. I want you on my side. That was all I could think about. I want him on my side. And he has been a wonderful...
And you called him what? A
hunk.
A hunk.
I called him a hunk. He was a real hunk because he was so good looking. But he's very, very strong, very powerful.
Let me ask you, before we move on to him, you described the Blessed Mother as so beautiful and like the pictures in
Maybe I cry when I talk about her and Christ. I can't help
She had
that.
the dark hair like the pictures we see.
Her hair is dark, but it's got little kind of golden highlights in it. And her skin was dark, but it wasn't real dark. It was, you know, just looked like porcelain skin, only it was darker, you know, beautiful.
And she was wearing a veil of sorts?
She had a veil.
And a long gown?
I had everybody ask me. She also had a bunch of little angels around her, little cherubs. I've had a lot of people ask me what color her eyes were and what color Christ's eyes were. And do you know to this day? I can't tell you. I remember looking into Christ's eyes, but to me, I remember seeing these deep brown eyes, so deep, dark brown, that I felt like I was being just absorbed into them. I wished I'd brought the picture that I have of Christ that looked so much like he did there in heaven. His hair was parted in the center, and it was kind of brownish, wavish type hair, and he had the beard. And I guess what I remember always is his eyes. His eyes is
penetrating. Like they could see into your soul, which they could.
He was doing a good job reading my soul.
A glow around him?
Oh, he was just beautiful. He was in something that was the white, looked like a white, white thing. And I'm going to talk about his wounds and so on in just a moment. But once you hear his voice, you never forget it. You never forget it. And he's got a beautiful voice. And when he speaks, it's like you hear little angels also just singing away when his voice is just, gosh, Jesus, help me describe. He's just beautiful. That's all I can say. I can't say any more. When I look at him on the cross, I have a picture that I carry around with me of how he looked on the cross. I remember asking him if the beating he endured was very bad, and he gave me just like a flash of the crucifix with him on it, and it was horrible. He was just bloody and so beaten, and then he told me about his beating and how bad it was, and that when they used the cards, things that they hit him with, that on the ends of them were stones and shells and bones that were sharpened and curved.
The flagrum.
And they hooked in his skin, and when they would pull it, it would tear the skin. And he said it not only tore his skin, but it tore tendons and even tore muscles. And he said the pain was excruciating. And I had looked for, 25, 26 years, I guess, close to 30 years, for a picture that looked like my Jesus. And on the cross, and everywhere I go, no matter what country I went to, no matter where I was, I always looked for a crucifix that showed how he really looked, how he was beaten, not how he looked on most of them all cleaned up. And I couldn't find any anywhere. And one night at adoration, I was praying, and I have adoration alone. Mine's 12 midnight to 1 a.m., sometimes 12 midnight to 2 a.m., and sometimes 12 midnight to 3 a.m. If no one shows up after me, I stay. And I was asking him, I said, why can't I find something that shows how you were really beaten so that people will understand the suffering you endured for us and what we're doing to you now, because we're, destroying our world with the abortions and everything. And I said, why can't I find a picture? Why can't I find it? And the next morning at Mass, a gentleman after Mass came up to me and handed me a picture. And I just started crying. It was my Jesus. That's all I could say. That was how he looked. And it was a miracle picture.
So you saw him in heaven with the wounds?
Yes. Oh, yes.
Why does he still have the wounds?
They're just there. They're a reminder.
The souls that are in heaven. Even though there are different levels of that, I want to know. Even though some people are possibly closer to God, there's no competition about that, is there? I mean, everybody is equally happy.
Yeah. And the happiness in heaven, I had someone ask me this one time, and I thought how strange that they should ask, because I asked Christ the same thing. I remember asking him about if, say, a family member ended up in hell, how could I be happy in heaven knowing they were in hell? And he says, oh, you will never remember them, because I will wipe them from your memory. He said, nothing that is here in heaven is going to spoil the happiness and the love and the joy of heaven. And it's like no tears are shed there. It's just joy. It's just joy, and it's such love. You can feel it flowing. It's like an actual love that you can feel, that's just like picking you up and moving you around. I don't know how else to explain it.
And when you died, you were a mother. You were not working at the time?
No.
Okay, so it's 1970. You're a 30-year-old mom. You have 3 children. You die on an operating table. And then God shows you things that are going to happen in the future. A couple of things that have been, one thing that has been happening, but we really didn't know much about, and then things we had never heard of. Let's talk about those. Abortion is the first one.
Okay, he showed me, he said, now you're going to remember these things. And he showed me the abortions first. You have to realize this was January 1970. No one had even heard of abortions. And
because Roe v. Wade was not legalized till, was not the deciding factor till, what, 3 years later?
Yeah. And he showed me all the babies, billions, not millions, but billions of babies that were going to be destroyed. And he showed me that it was going to go up to the time of their birth, which partial birth. And I remember I couldn't understand it. Okay, there are some things that I can understand, and that was one thing I couldn't understand, because I love children so much, and to think a mother would want to destroy her baby.
You saw the actual physical abortions?
No, he just showed me the babies, but he explained. I knew what it was, and
in their bits and pieces afterwards.
And I remember turning back to him, and I was crying, and he was crying, and he said, "You see, now you see what mankind thinks of my gift of life." And that was the first time when I touched his tears. It was also the beginning of me realizing that my body was not there, it was just my soul. And he said, "Now watch more." And it was like, again, like this movie camera type thing. He showed me the euthanasia.
What did you see? Because I'm sure you didn't know what you were looking at first.
I saw people being put down like animals, given medication that stopped their hearts.
Old people, young people, who were they?
All ages. And he said, "No one has a right to take a life but Almighty God, because he gives a life, and no one has a right to take it." And I can remember I asked about euthanasia because I didn't understand what it was, and I wasn't even sure of the terminology. And he said, "This is what mankind is going to be doing." Then he said, "Of watch." He said that it wasn't the word cloning. I don't know what he used. But he said man was going to try to make life, and that they were going to start fooling around with the genes and the cells and try to make life. And then I saw these jars, like jars, and I could still see these look like babies in it, hooked up to some kind of a machine. It was like an artificial womb type thing. And when their little eyes opened, like they were looking out of the womb, the eyes were dead. There was nothing. And
is that because they had not been anointed by God? They had not received a soul? Because a lot of people argue that if there is a life that is made, then God has allowed it to happen, and so that there has to be a soul.
But you see, this is what's happening with mankind. We think we're becoming smarter than God, and many men think that they are God. And when they do that, you're traipsing and stepping on his territory, and he's not going to allow that. And right now, they're out there selling baby parts from aborted babies. There's a big market in that. And it's like the stuff that's going on, all the things that were shown to me has come to pass. And I know that they're working on this cloning thing, and I just know it. And I don't know how to stop it. You know, all I can do is talk about it and hope that people become wise enough, because when sorry. This is, if I had known,
That's okay.
I would have brought a Kleenex.
That's okay.
Almighty God is the only one that can give life. Some lives are very short. Some babies are born stillborn, and he has a reason for that. Every child, every soul that is conceived, that is to come into the world, God had plans for. Almighty God. He knows that soul before it's ever even conceived and brought into the world. If a child is born with birth defects, Down syndrome, or things like that, a lot of people are just so unhappy because they don't have a perfect baby. But they are perfect because God made them perfect. We don't see the perfectness that he made. He made the perfect little souls. And those are the children that go straight to heaven, by the way. And
those who are mentally or physically
God
impaired.
he sent them down here to teach us something, and it's usually love and compassion, and we're really stupid. You see, we can't seem to grasp that. And when he's ready for them, he brings them back home. Some of these children do suffer, but they know before these children suffer, they are suffering for other souls, they're suffering for conversion of souls, and they know, because before, at the time of their conception, God will ask them a question. And sometimes they'll ask if they will suffer for him. And they say yes, and they will suffer maybe all their life, or may have just a very brief, short life. Each child is so special, and they're all have angels around them.
Sandra, why do you think God had you come back? You live now in a small town in Louisiana, Sulphur, Louisiana.
He sent me back on a mission, and I think the reason why he has me even speaking at the times that I am now is because of the way our world is. And I'm on a crusade. I have to work for him, and I don't want to not work for him, and it's to bring souls back to Christ. And it doesn't matter who you are, what religion you are. No matter where I go, I talk about him and the Blessed Mother. And I laugh. I tell him all the time. I call it, I evangelize for him constantly, no matter where I am. I have been shown angels. There are angels on our earth now. Don't ever think there aren't. They may look like you and me, but they're really angels. He does put them down in human form so that they can mingle with us. If there's a reason for that, he's sending them down to get a little bit more help from heaven, for heaven.
Because Satan is prowling, destroying marriages.
He never quits. He never quits. He doesn't like me at all, and that's okay, because I don't like him either. He stinks. He's ugly, and I laugh about him. I say no perfume, cologne, plastic surgery, anything will ever do any good for this guy and his cohort, because they are all horrible, and they all smell.
And the closer you are, like you are to God, the harder it's going to be, because he's trying to draw you away.
I get attacked. It's a never-ending thing, and I'm always having to call my angels, and it's never-ending for them. And I know when the day comes that they can all retire, they're all going to say, thank you, because I keep them hopping.
What is the one empowering message that you'd like to share with the people? I know there's a 4-letter word you always try to stress for people. Love.
Yes. Christ came here and was conceived and born on our earth and walked on our earth out of love for us. He didn't come here to be silly and funny and so on and so forth. He came here out of love. All the material things in the world are not going to get you into heaven. All the money in the world is not going to get you into heaven. The things that will get you into heaven is doing for him. When you do for him, you're doing for others, like helping the homeless out. I have a thing with the homeless. I cannot go by a homeless person on a corner without stopping and giving them some money and a Mary card wrapped up in the money. No matter where I go, everyone gets those little Mary cards because they're miracle cards. I'm going to tell you one thing about angels. One of the things that Jesus showed me was an angel that I had encountered and did not know it. And that's why after that I decided I would never, ever turn my back on a homeless person. I was coming out of Foley's. This was just before my death experience. This was in December, and I died in January. And this was a big shopping mall over there at Alameda Mall. And it was rainy, cold, nasty, and I was aggravated. I'd been shopping. I couldn't find half the things at Christmas, and the crowds in the store and the rudeness. And I come out, and there's this old man standing there outside the doors in all that weather. And he had on a coat that was all torn and raggedy looking, and he looked like he needed a shave, and he was so cold. He was standing there just shaking, and he asked me as I walked by him if I could spare a couple of dollars for something hot to drink.